Hello, I am William Jamar Wright,
And I'm Hattie.
and this is our podcast, HattieJo. What are we doing? So, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. So, on this episode of What Are We Doing, we're going to talk about a friend and coworker of mine who passed away, Greg Dale. He passed away right around the Thanksgiving holiday, and he was somebody that while I was at Duke, I worked with for 2016 until
2020, so 4 years.
it may have been, no, it was before that, because I started working in student athlete development no, it was 2014, because I spent
14? You said 16.
Yeah. So hold on. So I started it, went back in 2010, 2013, 2011.
Can you pull out the old resume?
13. Probably would help.
But sometime between 2014 and 2016 is when you first started working. I mean, 4 or 6 years, it's a long time either way.
Yeah.
To be working closely with someone. So can you explain a little bit about what his role was in the athletic department?
Yeah, so he was our, basically he was our sports psychologist. He did a lot to help, I would say, grow the athletic culture of Duke. So he was the sports psychologist, and he would meet with student athletes if they were struggling with, getting over mental hurdles or, they wanted somebody to talk to.
So it wasn't specific to any one program. It was any student athlete.
No, so he oftentimes, he would meet with students individually. He would also meet with teams. So if the head coach is like, hey, we want to have you come come and talk. And then also, so he was a director of our leadership program as well. And so him and Scott Ucola, who oversees the kind of the PE and Rex class portion. And so the two of them worked together to kind of oversee, and it was kind of so let me kind of go back. So Greg's title was the director of sports psychology. But he also ran our leadership program,
which I feel is where one of the areas that you really got to know.
Yes. And so Jackie Seiler, she was the SWA, and she kind of oversaw everything. And then there was kind of on that next level, senior management. It was Greg, Leslie, and Scott. And they kind of each had their own part in the leadership program. And then I was kind of underneath them in kind of the support role and making sure. So that was kind of
making it happen.
Yeah. And so it was Greg basically they were all Jackie was the leader of us all, but they all kind of had different ideas, and we would meet and discuss things that we wanted to do with the program and how we wanted to see it grow. And we would go on a retreat as a staff and kind of brainstorm the upcoming year and pick out dates and stuff. So it was I felt very blessed and lucky to be a part of their group, because they had since 2008, I want to say, they had been working together. It may have been before then, the four of them had been working together and built such a
basically the entire time since I graduated high school till when I graduated my PhD, they had been working together as a whole group.
Well, they were still working together, even
time. I mean,
and they
Jackie recently retired, didn't she retire?
Oh yeah, Jackie did. Yeah, Jackie did retire when we left. Yeah, so they were just you could tell they just had a close knit group.
And knew each other really well.
Yeah, and I was blessed to be like kind of incorporated into that.
Wait,
group.
was Greg Dale at your going away party?
Yeah, at Jackie's.
Oh, so
Yeah.
maybe I did meet him.
Yeah, you did. You
Okay.
definitely met him.
Okay.
And so,
Was he also maybe at like one of the tennis games or soccer games?
yeah, he was oftentimes at a lot of sporting events.
Okay, I kind of recall when we first started dating, there was like one soccer game. I think it might have even been like a national championship qualifier.
Yes, it was it was in
Like,
Cary.
yeah.
Yeah. He was definitely there.
Because I feel like you introduced me to some people, and then you're like, okay, now I'm introducing you to Jackie. Like,
yeah.
But I recall there was multiple people more than just Leslie. And
Yeah.
I thought, okay, all right.
And so we, like, I get brought into their group, and it's kind of like one of those things, like, it's very clear you guys have been working together and you do this on a regular basis, and like, I kind of gotta...
You have your procedures.
Yeah, I gotta find my, like, kind of way in and, like, find a way to, like, voice my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And Greg was one of the first, like, professionals that I worked with that was like, you have something valuable, and I'm gonna ask questions to like allow you to like share your input.
To bring it out of you.
Yeah. And you could like, cause he would oftentimes go and work with like businesses and like work on like their team culture.
Mm-hmm.
He's written books on like team culture, and so like he understood like the team dynamic and like how to like get people to come out and like share and contribute. And so I remember like our first meeting, we were
and that can be really, sorry to interrupt you, but like that can be really hard to do. Like, I'm a very outgoing person. I've never once in my life felt any type of restriction on like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say something. Maybe I should feel that feeling more, but I don't. But anyway, like,
well, I would say
I guess
that,
what
like,
I'm saying is I am very outgoing in terms of like, I can sit down and talk to anybody, but I recognize that that is not common. Like, even in my job, there's plenty of times that people will be like, you know, speak up if there's like some issue, or let us know, da 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 da. And I'm like, you don't have to worry about me not speaking up. Like, I'll definitely be speaking up if I see something. But I guess I perceive from that, and I see others, like, it can be very hard when you're the new one in a group, especially with an established way of things are operating, right? Where everybody in the group knows each other really well, to be the new person and to feel comfortable to contribute new ideas or talk about doing things a slightly different way, or like, that can be hard for anyone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like it's especially good to have someone on your team that's aware of that and encouraging the discussion.
Yeah. And I just feel like he did a really good job of just like, hey, like, you're a former student athlete. What do you think about like these topics that we're like thinking about like addressing at like our retreat?
Right, because you work with student athletes.
Yeah, and so
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just trying to make the point that even for someone very outgoing like me, I can see how that would be tough. And so if you're someone not as outgoing, right, a regular amount or even a little less, I feel like it would be even more difficult. So it's great that you had someone willing to help bring that out of people.
And so like he was very good at like reading the room, and kind of just like having a presence in the room. And so like in our first like kind of staff meeting with all 5 of us.
Is this when you first met him? Because you were starting out the story before I interrupted you. You were saying, I remember when I first met him.
Yeah, and this is kind of like that first, like, I think, I'm sure I had met him at some point before, but like this was kind of our first like interaction.
Got it.
Of like actually working together. And so we like, literally we like had this meeting, and I just felt this sense of like he gets it, and he's not like afraid to like get everybody's input to help getting the ball rolling and getting ideas out there. And it was very clear, like throughout all of our interactions, he was always very like inclusive and trying to get as many like ideas and like varying opinions, and basically try to get as much information as possible. But yeah, we would like, so that was kind of my first interaction with him. And then over the years, like I continued to work with him, and his schedule is a little weird because he would oftentimes travel to like work with
his business.
Yeah, to work with like different businesses, or like he traveled literally across like the world and presenting to like groups, and like talking about team culture. And he would always come back with like, oh, like these stories, like, hey, like you need to, if you ever go to this place, you need to go to this restaurant. He was a huge foodie. Like he could tell you, like, I think one of our trips to Florida, he was like, hey, like you should go and check out like these 3 places if you have time. Cause he, like, when you're traveling as much as he does, like he gets the chance to go to these nice restaurants, and he's like giving me all these suggestions. So like, it was very nice to like have him as a coworker. And like, I think about like, oftentimes he would be in the office on like Monday through Wednesday, and then he would travel like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then be back on Monday for like programming and stuff. And so like we will oftentimes have once a month, we would have captains meetings, and like some of the discussions, like I would.
So can you explain what a captain's meeting is?
Oh yeah, so there's spring, there's fall, and then there's spring meetings. And so all the fall sports, they meet in the spring. All the spring sports, they meet in the fall.
So is this one meeting with all the captains from all the sports in the fall, or is this like the 2 captains on the volleyball team meet with Greg Dale, and then
No,
a
so it's
different
all the
meeting,
sports. It's all the sports.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like you would have in this meeting Greg Dale, you would have in the football captains, the volleyball captains, the
Yeah.
field hockey captains.
And actually, I changed that. So for the captains meetings, it was all the sports. Like we met once a month.
Spring.
Yeah, fall or spring. We met
Okay.
once a month, and Greg would have a topic that he would bring up and like discuss, and we would oftentimes try to get like coaches or somebody to come and like talk. Or I mean, one time Dr. White came and talked to the meeting, to the group, and so like I would normally get there like 30 minutes before to make sure all the like tech was working, and like we could get Greg's iPad hooked up, because he literally carried like all of his presentations on his iPad. He had like a little clicker.
Yeah,
so
I even remember. I forget what was happening, but we were trying to get something going for something, and you were like, "Oh, I know how to work this. Like I do this all the time. I'm trying to get these."
Yeah.
Like the iPad hooked up. Like you were the go-to guy for getting the iPads hooked up and going.
Yeah, and like there were a couple of times where we literally had to bring in like somebody from facilities to be like, "Hey, like we try to use this, but it's not working correctly. Like, how do we get this to work correctly?" And so like I would get there typically like 30 minutes before and make sure everything is set, and then Greg would get there shortly after, and like just those like 10 to 15 minutes before like students would get there, we would like talk about like what the topic was going to be that night, and like what were my thoughts. Or like 5 or 10 minutes afterwards, we would have a discussion about like, hey, like this is what my experience was like trying to like manage upward and like talk to coaches, because as a captain, that's like part of your responsibility.
Right.
And like those were some of like just some fond memories that I have of us having those type of discussions. And then like the 5 minutes after, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I gotta get running. I gotta go meet with a student in my office." Like, because he would set up meetings after the captain's meetings because he was already there on campus. So,
And I mean, the student schedules are equally busy, right? So
Yeah.
like finding a time, it's often going to be like 9 p.m. on a Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah.
So didn't he also have two daughters that played a lot of sports, and he would talk to you a lot about them going to like volleyball or something? Or am I confusing that with a different individual?
I think you're confusing that with a different individual.
Oh.
He had a daughter and then
I mean, maybe it was
two
just
boys.
one.
Yeah.
But there was like something about her playing sports. No.
Yeah. But he had a daughter. She lived in, I want to say she lived in New York, and then he had boys that lived there in North Carolina. One of them went to UNC, and I think the other two were in high school. But yeah, it was just really just a joy to be around, and a good like teammate, like coworker, and really like I'm happy I had him as a friend, and someone that like I worked with. He would oftentimes start off his presentations to like, not to like the captains, but like to parents or somebody. Like he would always start with like a little joke about UNC, and how like you got to have good sportsmanship. But like sportsmanship may go out the window whenever you're playing your rival. So, but like he really was a good coworker. I remember there was one lesson, like we were looking at all the different teams, and like he worked with like field hockey. Like the coaches would be like, "Hey, I want you to come and talk to my team." It's like you work with field hockey, you work with like lacrosse, like you work with women's soccer, like all these different teams that like the coaches bring you in to work with them. And if you look at it, like they're all really successful. Like you should be like happy about that. Like you should take some credit for that. Like you have a part in it. He was just like, yeah, like I'm always careful about like trying to taking too much credit for being there. Because if you're taking credit and for the wins, and when the programs
Not
are doing
for the
good,
losses, yeah.
then like you better be taking credit and like being there for when
Take
like,
responsibility,
when like the losing happens. And that's one of the stories that always sticks with me, just like the responsibility that like you take as a leader. So yeah, this is our little tribute to Greg Dale, who like we shared some fond times together, and I'll always remember those years that we spent together at Duke, working late and trying to help the student athletes be the best versions of themselves, and kind of our conversations just helping each other grow. And I be remiss if I didn't thank Jackie and Leslie and Scott. Like you guys, for lack of better words, like you shared Greg with me and allowed me to work with him, and it really like I have very fond memories of him and our time together. So that is what we're doing. You guys take it easy.